A woman holds up a camera, intending to capture the deceased's visage, but in the next second, the corpse in the lens turns its head to look at her. The latest 2022 horror mystery film, The Gates, arrives with a thrilling shock. A mysterious death row inmate in prison unexpectedly attracts a supernaturalist, a psychic master, and a priest to investigate him. The story begins with the identity of this death row inmate. After the death of his wife, William became obsessed with evil rituals in an attempt to resurrect her.
This is the last one. Now you can come back to me.
As William was about to perform the ritual, several police officers broke in, warning him to drop the knife. However, William still slit the woman's throat. The woman's blood dripped onto the table and fell on the lying corpse of his wife. William then rushed towards the police, attempting to buy time. After taking down one of the officers, he was knocked to the ground, losing the ability to resist. Seeing his wife's motionless body under the table, William's heart was filled with despair. After William's arrest, he was to be executed for his heinous crimes within a week. This time, it was not the traditional British hanging but the first electric chair introduced from across the ocean, attracting many notable figures to witness. But William, on the electric chair, eerily smiled at them.
May God have mercy on your soul.
God can't have my soul.
As the electric switch was pulled, William's body convulsed. After a long 20-second electric shock, Governor Owen was about to declare William's execution over, but William slowly raised his head. Surprising everyone, Owen had no choice but to order another electric shock. This time, it took a full 30 seconds for William to die completely. However, those present were not satisfied with this method of execution, as hanging could end a life quickly with just a rope, while the electric chair seemed to cause more torment to the condemned. Soon, a man claiming to be an autopsy photographer came to the prison, along with his female assistant and a set of photography equipment. The autopsy photographer applied to Owen to take photos of William's corpse, but during the assistant's photography, she seemed to see the corpse turn its head to look at her, while the others around her did not notice anything unusual. In fact, Frederick is a scientist researching supernatural phenomena, and the female assistant, Emma, is his niece. Frederick is engaged in research on whether the soul exists after death. There are many things in this world that are invisible to the naked eye, such as infrared and ultraviolet rays, which require specific tools to observe. Frederick boldly hypothesizes that the spirit is a form of energy, and science shows that energy is attracted to energy. He devised a small energy magnetic field device to attempt to attract the spiritual energy of the deceased. In other words, using technology to communicate with the souls of the dead. Frederick then began to introduce the use of the device, hoping to get the mayor's investment in his research. The cylindrical recording device can receive high-frequency sound waves that humans cannot hear. As long as questions are asked to the departed souls, their responses will be recorded and immediately played back. Frederick calls this the electronic voice phenomenon, which could prove the existence of the soul after death. However, there's another method to communicate with spirits, the spirit board used by mediums. Frederick considers this merely a word game, whereas his device represents cutting-edge science that has the potential to change the world. Hearing this, Lucian, a famous psychic, was displeased. As they argued, the light bulb on the device suddenly exploded. Frederick explained that the device was still in the research and testing phase, but the mayor demanded real test data, or he would consider them frauds and kick them out. Just as Frederick was troubled, Emma suddenly noticed something eerie about the photos of William. It was as if William was opening his eyes and looking right into the camera. Emma checked that the camera wasn't malfunctioning and there wasn't any dust on the lens, and that all the other photos of the dead taken on the same day were normal. Frederick believed this was their best test subject, and he was immediately excited for Emma to pack up all the equipment, while he went to apply for a prison visit to validate his invention. Meanwhile, the prison holding several death row inmates had also experienced strange occurrences, with 2 inmates choosing to end their lives within a week. The prison guards are terrified, believing there's something unclean within the prison walls. So Owen calls Father Matthews to take a look.
Save us, Father.
There's evil down here.
Matthews took the Bible in his hand and began to pray to God, but in the next second the Bible flew out of Matthews' hand, and before he knew it, his body hit the wall uncontrollably. Soon after, Frederick and Lucian arrive at the prison and show Owen the photos they took of William. After hearing about Matthews' ordeal, Lucian comes into the office. He asks Matthews to raise his hands to see if it was because God had abandoned him. thus making Matthews vulnerable to the attack of the evil spirit. However, upon examination, there are no marks of the devil on Matthews' arms.
Go down there and you will see. You will see.
Lucian first goes to the basement cells but doesn't sense anything unusual. Hearing from Owen that William died from electrocution, the group then moves to the execution room, only for Emma to feel breathless upon entering. While Frederick comforts Emma, Lucian asks the warder about William. William is the most vicious criminal since the Ripper. To quell public outcry, the judge granted him a fast track to the death penalty, leading to his execution just a week after being incarcerated. Normally, the prison sells the bodies of executed inmates to medical schools for research, but because William died after 2 electric shocks, they had no choice but to cremate his body in the prison furnace. Lucian led everyone back in front of William's cell. He had the guards bring a round table and instructed everyone to stand around it. He wants to try to communicate with William's spirit, and only by understanding each other can he solve the problem of the evil spirits.
Any spirits who wish to make contact, please use me as a vessel. What holds you here, spirit? Knock twice. Like this. If your name is William Colcott.
But no matter how much Lucian tries to communicate, there's no response. Owen decides to let Frederick try with his device. The group moves back to the office. After charging his device, Frederick turns it on.
If there is anyone there who would like to make contact, please make yourself known. What do you want? What is your name? Are you William Colcott?
Though there are no anomalies at the moment, Lucian seems to sense something and asks them to play back the sounds just recorded. When Frederick asks if the spirit is William, William's voice seems to come through in the recording, confirming that the malevolent spirit in the prison might indeed be William. Lucian immediately asks Owen to bring William's personal belongings. After finding a metal ring among them, Lucian starts to see visions of William. What everyone doesn't know is that Emma, who was tidying up the equipment in the office, suddenly walks towards the execution room in a trance. After pulling down the switch, her eyes vacant, she walked step by step towards the electric chair, filled with high-voltage electricity. Inside, Emma's mind is screaming in resistance, but she's still uncontrollably reaching out her hand towards the chair. A man howls, repeatedly slamming his head against the iron door until he collapses, his face covered in blood. This marks the 3rd bizarre inmate death within a week in the prison. All of this happened because the soul of William, who had been executed, did not disappear. This drew the attention of supernaturalists, psychic masters, and priests to investigate. Controlled by an evil spirit, Emma heads to the execution room and turns on the electric switch. Just as she is about to be electrocuted, Frederick arrives in time to turn off the power and saves Emma. The group asks Owen to lock down the entire prison. However, as everyone fell into sleep at night, the device capable of communicating with spirits began to operate on its own. The next morning, George's wife, Marie, comes looking for her husband who hadn't come home all night. A sympathetic colleague lets Marie in while he goes to notify George. Unbeknownst to the prison guards, his behavior gave the evil spirits a chance to take advantage of the situation. While communicating with another dead inmate in the prison, Lucian hears that the device's electrical noise was heard throughout the previous night. The inmate advises them to leave the prison immediately, or they will end up dead like him. Holding William's ring, Lucian attempts to communicate with him again.
Show yourself, William. Show yourself.
But as Lucian turns around, William's ghost suddenly appears before him. Lucian asks William what he wants, but instead of speaking, William looks at the ring in Lucian's palm. During the struggle for the ring, William suddenly hears a woman's call, allowing Lucian to narrowly escape, but the ring in Lucian's hand seemed to have been seared by a high temperature, branding his palm with a mark. In pain, Lucian removes the ring and discovers William's message on the paper in front of him. She will return to me. At the same time, the guard brought George to Marie, but Marie suddenly grabbed the guard's throat and strangled him to death. Then Marie lunged at her husband, smothering George to death with something she expelled. Then, the possessed Marie found Matthews. She used Matthews' cross necklace to hang him mid-air and then strangled him to death in front of everyone. Lucian steps forward to stop Marie, but she smiles eerily and twists her own neck. Facing such a powerful evil spirit, Frederick and Lucian decide to use the electric current in the execution room to enhance their device, turning the entire room into an electromagnetic field. This will make the evil spirit William show his original form. Although they manage to force the evil spirit out, it invades Lucian's body at the last moment. Facing possession by William, Lucian grabs the electrified chair, hoping the current will defeat the evil spirit inside him. Fortunately, they succeed, and Lucian no longer feels the presence of the evil spirit. After saying goodbye to Owen, they leave the prison. Their deed of eradicating the prison's evil spirit makes the headlines of London newspapers. A few days later, Lucian finds Frederick and Emma and brings them research funding. Although Lucian is a psychic, he would have died at the hands of the evil spirit without Frederick's help. But just after Lucian said goodbye to Frederick and Emma, on his way to the train station he took off his gloves.
Soon, my love.